Om Hiranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachu Brahm Jyoti Sham Jyoti Adhyatma Vidu Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, ever pure and free from all taint, the essence of all things, in all things, which all beings seek, either consciously or unconsciously. There shines Brahman. It is that which the gurus teach. It is that which the wise ones exult in. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Indram Mitram Varunanagni Mahurato Divyaha Sasapurna Garuttaman Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanchim Agnim Yaman Matarishvana Mahu. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. To that presence who is one, the seers assign many a title, such as the Father of the Gods, the eternal friend of all beings, the all-pervasive ether, a fire of yoga, the winged carrier of consciousness, the devourer of death, and the one who shines forth the light. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Satyena, Om Satyena Labhyastapasa Yesa Atma Samyagnena Brahmacharyena Nicham Antaha Sharirehi Jyotirmayo Hi Shubraha Yam Pashanti Atayaha Kshinadoshaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Atman, the indivisible self in all beings and all things, is realized by knowledge, by moderation, by austerity, and by veracity, all of these constantly cultivated. When mental impurities dissolve due to this practice, then the seer beholds it everywhere, in everything, existing even here, in this very body. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. This morning, our second of 4 classes on the Adhyatma Upanishad. That is, 1 yesterday, 1 today, and then 2 next weekend for you to tune into. And in the following weekend, we won't be live streaming because we will be in seminar on the Guru-Shishya relationship, which will be a profound subject we can delve into. Having just crossed over Guru Purnima, which was last Tuesday and which we celebrated last night with beautiful flower leis made by the hands of the devotees and various scents and mudras and slokas, mantrams that we offered to that Guru principle. As Vivekananda has told us wonderfully, it's not a personality, it's a principle, and it exists in all beings and all things. Some are just maybe a little bit more effective and successful in contacting it, and those are the ones with high intelligence. The others of nominal intelligence will have to move slowly forward, like asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. They move from the illusion of death to eternal life, and they move from lower truth to higher truth, as Vivekananda described it and defined it when he came here in 1893, and again in the early 1900s. He was here twice and spent all of some 7 years on this country in England and a few places that he visited in between. So you might say he took a look at the world, saw the poor state of his own country, and looked at the richer, more powerful country of America and, of course, of England, which was in his country dominating it at the time, or beginning to, before Gandhi came, and probably thought these beings could really use a good injection of Brahmagyan, as my teacher Swami Sheshananda used to say. Need that from the Guru, the embodied Guru, so that you remember the truth throughout your life, and that relativity and its poisons and its various vagaries and vicissitudes won't affect you. You'll be able to move right through it. One person said to me last night about his friend, "Oh, he's really kind of an example to me because he doesn't get affected by any of the hardships that he faces, but he faces lots of hardships. Doesn't even look like he is going through them. His mind is solving the problems day to day." So that's good, but as Swamiji said, there's good, better, and best. And probably better than that would be not to have those problems in the first place. That is, if you could be born as these great seers and saints and sages and saviors, and of course exemplars, then you would come into this body free of your own problems. Maybe you might want to turn your mind, as Holy Mother said, towards the solving of the problems of others and removing of their sufferings, which is both a Vedic ideal and a Buddhist ideal more currently, that we want to remove the suffering of all sentient beings. But of course that's an impossibility. There are some sufferings that are inherent in life: birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. Both Vedavyas and Lord Buddha agreed upon that in their different times. Those 6 transformations, or what sometimes called the 6 billows, are rising up like clouds in a blue sky, billows, and covering the infinite expanse of pure conscious awareness that we should always be living in, and actually which we always are living in. We just sometimes fall victim to that veiling power of the clouds, or the distorting power, making it look like something other than what it is. Both of those are our own problem. That is how we deal with Maya in this world. And Maya was one of the words mentioned in the Upanishad yesterday when we took slokas, and I recalled for your mind 17 through 25. So we really took a big bite into this Upanishad, and now we're busy digesting it. That is, basically, there were some 8 slokas we took in one class. That's maybe a record for me. But usually maybe 1 sloka per class, or maybe 2. I get, as you can see, caught up in the explication of these teachings, even word by word, how profound they are. Just a word like Maya could mean name, form, time, space, and causation, as Vivekananda described it. And even inside of a word Maya, even a syllable or a letter would also be very profound to contemplate, because deep inside of every letter, just like deep inside of an atom, is quarks and neutrons and subatomic particles. In the same way, just like the word inside of a letter, are many, many implications which the mind can find and implode. As I said yesterday, and we had one of those chants here on the chart by Swami Sheshanandaji, my own teacher, that I finally put together some of his great renunciation sayings after we looked at Jesus's great renunciation sayings, listed by Timothy and Mark and especially Matthew. They evince this total renunciation of the world, whether monk or householder, that is, be able to see through these appearances that veil and distort the ever-perfect reality that underlies them. That is, they apparently distort. And they can't really taint Brahman. It's all your true nature. Atman is always there, it's always perfect, it's changeless, and it's always shining with light. Like we said yesterday in one of these slokas, how can darkness lie upon light? It's not possible. Yet Maya makes it seem to. And so we become very facile and very adept at seeing through appearances. We see through them in nature, we see through them in people. That is, as Shyam Krishna was saying before the live streaming audience joined us this morning, we read just prior to the camera clicking on, he was saying about how he couldn't even stand the company of worldly people who talk about nothing but gold and lust and so forth, and their hands are constantly selfishly grasping to themselves, whereas the selfless person turns it the other way, away from Maya, and begins to give and try and serve. That even that one yoga called karma yoga, which has been given a facelift in this day and time by Swamiji, that is, it was probably behind the other three yogas, and now it's sort of been brought to front because of the condition of the world right now. The condition of the world right now isn't just, poor farmers tilling the soil, laboring and bringing in a little food and taking it to market and sharing it with their neighbors. That was hundreds of years ago throughout. The condition of the world now is absolute opulence with plenty for everyone, and a few of them grasping greedily to themselves, hogging it all. And that's a whole different level of Maya. You see, that's, like I said yesterday, I love the potential of, I love who humanity is. See, that's the Atman, the one soul. I love that. That's why I keep serving and teaching and so forth. It keeps me going, as they say. And I like their potential. That is, if they can somehow move forward and do sadhana, some sort of practice, bring that into the household, like this house in the middle of this neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, is very unique because we stand for principles like spiritual practice, the 4 yogas, and serving and so forth. But I don't like what we've become, samsaris. That is, we've become materialists and we've become distracted, minds have become fragmented, concentrating on everything but the one reality within us, and therefore forgetting it. And I absolutely hate those who commit violence and war against others, whether it be outright, which would probably be better if you were honest about it, or this kind of charade kind of war where you're creating excuses to go and take the resources of other countries and then broadcasting it on TVs and movie screens that you're so big and great. You see, this is the America we don't like. And the America that just went to war to protect itself was a much better, because in this world you really can't get rid of war. You can give peace a chance. There's one nice slogan, but you can never be so naive as to think that this world is a peaceful world or a totally violent world. It's an admixture of both, and that will never change. Because this is a world. But in Brahman there are no worlds, as we will see by one of these charts coming up. You don't find any divisions or compartments or in Brahman. When you live in it, it's one indivisible consciousness. And if these great souls evinced anything like Jesus and all the way up to Swamiji, was that when they saw a person who was quote unquote a sinner, they did not see the sin. You see, they saw this perfect soul who had fallen into error, that's all, and then would return them to the realization of their own innate divine nature. In other words, what he said when he came here, Vivekananda, said, liable of liable, it's the worst sin to call another a sinner. Man's nature is divine, and that's by essence, swarupa. And then they just fall out of it. Well, it's a little bit like Adam and Eve falling into transgression and falling out of that paradise, if you want to interpret it that way, which would be the better way to interpret it, rather than making sin a black mark on your soul that sends you to hell, and so then you have to wait 2,000 years for a savior to come back to help you at all. You know, it's just not making sense to people nowadays. So they're running towards the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Gita, you see, here in America, as Vivekananda said, because they're even beginning to reinterpret some of the Bible and Quran slokas and surahs, to reflect this original truth, see, that man's nature is divine. That's the message Vivekananda brought, and if you can't comprehend it, then you fall back on some practice and some method. See, that's the secondary method. And the Vedanta is all about truth. You hardly find a method anywhere in the Upanishads. And even when you find a method, that method is considered to be secondary, and not ultimately real. You never fall from truth and go back to truth, because why? Because the soul never moves. It's the mind that's moving. It's the mind that goes from heaven to earth to hell. And the mind is a complex, you see, that thinks in a particular given period of time, a bardo or a lifetime. And it begins to accumulate karma by the way it thinks and acts. And then it comes back again to work that out. And pretty soon, you've got millions of people going along a river of souls that go from earth to ancestors and back. Basically, earth to heaven and back again. Swami Vivekananda and we came across the saying in the retreat last week on the American River when many of us attended it, is that the idea, to the Hindu, the idea of heaven and earth and going to heaven is rather a vulgar one. That's to quote him exactly, rather a vulgar one, you see. It's just more pleasure and less pain, maybe, and maybe not knowing that there's a brick on your tail. If you remember the master's story about the mongoose who gets caught and tied by the children because they know how quick it is, you see. So the soul is quick like that. It can wiggle out of its karma for maybe 80 years, you see. And but then it finds itself in heaven, and all of a sudden, it's the reverse of Left Behind, you see. You know Left Behind theory? There's last week at the retreat, we went into the bathroom and there's a pile of clothes lying on the floor. You see, it's not done at retreat or in our ashrams. You don't leave stuff lying around. So I thought to myself, oh, somebody we got left behind. Somebody was brushing their teeth and all of a sudden, and their clothes were lying there, you see. Because God loves nudity, so of course you'd go to heaven naked. But then I thought, well, there's a reverse to that. You're up in heaven, and you're sitting around a table with your ancestors having a big party, you see, and all of a sudden you're talking, hi, there's you're gone, and your wings are laying there. You see, there's a bunch of ashes or something. And you appear in a body, in a baby's body, back on earth, you see. So, you were left undone more than left behind, you see. You had to come, your karma runs out, and you had to come back to earth to serve it. So that's my point. If you must do some sort of a practice to alleviate yourself of the illusion of suffering, of all these illusions that Maya proposes in relativity, like I'm a body, or I'm an ego, or this is mine. You see, my superiors, my religion is superior to others. Those are all outright lies that are being foisted upon you by the combination of Maya and the collective mind. And your individual mind needs to skirt that. See, it needs to get that behind you. See, I think that's when Christ was saying, "Get thee behind me," he didn't mean the devil with a pitchfork and horns. I don't think that even existed in his time. But basically it's these devilish things that plague the mind of the individual that cause them to fall into this forlorn state of delusion, which is foreign to the soul. The soul's climbs are light and peace and love and truth and bliss and knowledge. See, this is mother knowledge, mother wisdom. So we must avail ourselves of that. Let's do that with this little introduction to you this morning to get the jnana juices, you see, rolling in us. These nadis that are in our mind, not just in our body. Nadis mean channels or nerves that through which energy flows. So we must ask that psychic prana, you see, propitiate it, you see, and say, would you wake up and flow through my mind again? And that's a good thing to do at Guru Purnima, because we were chanting last night, in fact, about that when we sang actually, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Deva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So the Guru is Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is the Guru. And the Guru is also Vishnu, Lord Vishnu. The Guru is also Shiva, Devo Maheshwara, the great Shiva, the Lord of all gods. Guru Eva Param Brahma, the Guru is also one with Brahman, Eva. Therefore, we pay our salutations, our obeisances to that Guru. And that Guru, again, a principle. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that very nicely. He'd say, until such a time when you realize the state of your original nature, then you should follow the way of the scriptures and the gurus, the seers, because your own mind will become its guru eventually. But all you need to do is test that every once in a while to see if that's the case. If your mind is still not leading you into error or problems or old, outdated, antiquated ways of thinking, you see, habits that persist, little doubts and sufferings and so forth, those niggling things that creep into the cracks of your thinking and sleeping consciousness, you see. Thinking consciousness because you're not thinking quite right, you see, like Bhranti Darshana, one of those problems with the nerve, with the nadis, you see, the granthis in the mind. Remember that? It was having these intellectual problems of not thinking philosophically correct. Philosophically incorrect, you see. And then sleeping when you fall out of awareness, because the Atman is always in pure awareness. God never sleeps. So you must model yourself after that until your body might go to sleep, but your mind is still there, elated in the kingdoms of heaven within. For where are the kingdoms of heaven, I ask you, if not within? See? They're not above. See? So they must be within you. When we say within what? A cave? Well, a cave of the heart, maybe, or a cave of the mind. So if you believe the words of Jesus and Buddha and so forth, others, great meditators and great seers of the past in various religious traditions, then you'll know that these are real and these are to be visited. Best when you're still in the body, if you can make that transition. If you can pierce the Brahma Granthi and the Vishnu Granthi, these knots, you see, and get beyond the design that the ancestors have for you and the design that the gods and goddesses have for you, and go to the Ishvara form, to the Father through the Son, then you'll have this divine life that you've longed for such a long time, and which is available to you here in the waking state. It's not just something you go into dream or get in a post-mortem emancipation, as my teacher used to say. It has to be here and now in this eternal moment that's persisting. And it's only persisting to the one who's persistent. The percipient, perceived, and precipitant. The precipitant, you see, as the sloka said yesterday in the Adhyatma Upanishad. I was going to get to that, wasn't I? And so these things are dharma. See, it's not grist for the mill, as they say, that you get ground on a wheel and go from birth to death and death to birth to soul. But you do a different kind of grinding process, you see, the discrimination, viveka, which is illustrated here by the very first two words of this Upanishad, false superimposition. It's easier in Sanskrit, you see, vivarta. You just have one word. You say vivarta among the knowers of Brahman, they go, oh yeah, that problem. The problem of all problems, lack of discrimination. You could say vivarta, is false superimposition, that the soul is formless, nameless, deathless, birthless, and so forth. Yet when Maya kicks in and the three gunas and so forth, all of these things get foisted on the soul as if it were born, as if it dies, as if it was ignorant and so forth. And these are all false superimpositions. False superimposition. See, Sri Ramakrishna used to, with his young students around him, the great great 16 disciples we know of today used to laugh and then go like this. You see, now you see me, now you don't. That's false superimposition right there. It's a false covering that veils the vision of your true self. So if you want, we can take the first sloka all over again. I can take the first 2 words and talk on them for about 3 hours. And that will be our class today. You see, that's what's in a word. So you're not going to come up to me or any other authentic teacher of the Dharma, of which there are not that many in the America today, and say, what's in a word? See, you're talking too much. I said, well, that's for me to decide. When you go, I won't say anything for days. I'll just be in silence. But in order to teach, I have to come out of non-duality and teach from a qualified non-dual position, and that's going to take words. What do you talk about all day? The weather? Your aching corns? See? That's oil from the corns of holy men. You see? Holy oil. So, low-grade mantras coming out of the mouths of people all the time. How's the weather? Trying to break the ice, you see. But why not enjoy the sun? Forget about the ice. The sun of wisdom is always shining. And it shines on saint and sinner alike, as they say in Christendom. So we need to avail ourselves of that. And we did yesterday by speaking about these 8, 9, or 9 slokas from 17 or 18 on through 25. Let me read them for you. With the vision of the non-dual self through unwavering concentration, dharana, comes the dissolution of the knots of ignorance in the heart without residue. I have to stop, you see. I can't speak a sloka and then just go and read it, you see, because it's so pregnant there, you see. Dissolution of the knots of ignorance is one thing, but people can get rid of the knots of ignorance, but there can be a residue, he's saying. If you study your Yoga Sutras, you'll know this is true, that there's a sort of transcendence of the gunas that happens early on. But then there's a transcendence of the gunas that happens at a cosmic level, which is one of the last things to go. To get really trigunatita, transcendent of the 3 gunas, of slothfulness, restlessness, and the desire for balance, and pleasure, as it were, or exquisite pleasure even, you'll have to go to another level to transcend them. So, on vigil, see, I heard that word last night, we must all be on vigil. And we were just reading a story out of the Gospel about 3 virgins who were always on vigil, keeping the lamps burning, so waiting for God to come, you see, and attend them. So the knots of ignorance we looked at through that chart are the 10 knots in the rope of human bondage, right? We looked at those yesterday. Then 18 said, strengthening the sense of real self via this vision and rejecting the ego and its evolutes, remain indifferent to them all as to the objects like pots and clothes. The ego and its evolutes, if we wanted to take an old war horse, and we'll look at it soon again, at least take a glance, is basically the human ego, antakarna right there, and all its evolutes on down. You see, you have to dissolve those if they've become solidified. If they haven't become solidified, no problem. You see, you just move through them, right? You don't glom onto each station out of fear, you see, clinging to each station as if it were real, because the teachers have told you they're not real. Consciousness shifts among these stations. These are like satellites in deep space, you see. Take a rocket with several stages to one, and you man yourself up there with another rocket, take it to the next one. This way you can get deeper into space. So things like mind and intelligence and the tanmatras, the subtle elements and so forth, these consciousness mans these on the way out. It's called evolution. And then it divests itself of them on the way in to Brahman. It's called involution. There's a chain of evolutes outward and a reverse chain of evolutes inward. It's one of the most effective slokas or sayings that anyone ever said about it. That was Lord Kapila of the Samkhya philosophy or darshan. Sancharaha prati sancharaha. With 3 words he chose you the whole warp and woof of the cosmos, from the cosmic mind, Mahat, all the way down to the element earth, or as this said yesterday, right down to the clumps of grass. And then someone else comes along and says, yes, and that's all the non-self, you see. Shankara puts it in that kind of framework. It's all the non-self. Only you are the self. These are your evolutes. So the ego is evolutes, you see. Again, I can't stop and just let it roll by you. And here it is. All things from Brahma, that's Lord Brahma, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara. All the things from Brahma, the first of the Trinity, down to clumps of grass, are nothing but unreal adjuncts. Man ourselves up with a few English words. You know, see the Vedantists come, they speak Sanskrit, and they look the English, they scour it, and say, where will we find words for this? You know, how can we describe samskaras and samsara and false superimposition, vivarta? How can we explain this in so unreal adjuncts? Distinct from them, see the self existing as the immutable plenum. As far as I know, plenum just means this complete fullness, and it's not just a fullness that has no emptiness in it. It's exponentially expanding in its fullness. It's just adding on. Renunciation is a beautiful thing at a certain stage, and when it's mature, there's probably nothing quite like it. But in the stages of it, it's headed towards this idea of plenum, that everything is full, full, full. And you just renounce it because you've mistaken the unreal for the real. You've mistaken the tattvas, the principles, which are insentient, to be yourself, which is sentience. That needs to be reversed. If you reverse that, that's the whole meaning behind Swami Vivekananda's man-making policy, and behind Patanjali's saying that the seer has become bound to the scene. Oh, I see in my age, the seer has just become attached to the scene. We just need to reverse that here, see. But lo and behold, now here in the second millennium, people are attached to their TVs all day and all night. They never turn them off. That's the scene. That's the scene that's being watched, you see, again and again. Later on, a new sloka here that's coming up is the mind that knows itself, you know, gets over that phenomena. The mind that doesn't know itself falls in a victim to these things again and again, and doesn't know it's a victim. It's a disease without a remedy that eventually leads to not just laziness, but total inertia as a soul. The soul has no inertia to go anywhere, but just appear and disappear in bodies and suffer whatever's there without any vote in the matter, you see. It's lost its virility. So, plenum is a nice word. Then that isn't Sanskrit. I think that's Latin, isn't it? One's self is Brahma, Vishnu, Indra, and Shiva. This entire world is one's self. Other than this self, there is nothing. So we may go about the world as, you know, I'm a worker. Who are you? I'm a lawyer. Who are you? You know, I'm a vagabond. You see, whatever. You see, and call yourself by different names, but basically you're this one indivisible self, and so is everyone else, and so is everything else. That is, that self is in all. As we just chanted, Hiranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam. Hastamalaka, one of Shankar's disciples, puts it this way. Naham manusho nacha deva yaksho na brahmana kshatriya vaishya shudraha na brahmachari na grihiva nasto bhikshurna chaham nijabodharopaha. The very first verse of the Hasta Amalaka Stotram, first words this man ever spoke in his life when he was a teenage boy. Couldn't speak. He was a Brahmin, son of a Brahmin priest. Shankar came to town. His father brought him there. This boy can't speak. You see, he's mute. And Shankar turned to him and said, "Who are you?" He said, it's the first words he spoke, like in 15, 16 years. First words he spoke, "I am not a human. I am not a god, nor a being inhabiting celestial realms, like an angel or something, you see. I am neither a priest, a warrior, a merchant, or a menial worker," 4 castes. "I am neither monk, householder, hermit, or wanderer. I am the ever-conscious eternal self, infinite and pervading everything." And this might be why some of your teenage children here, you parents in America, are not speaking much. Because they're seeing a lie going on before their eyes. A lie that's been exacerbated by the tyranny of your forefathers, as Vivekananda put it. So to get out of this lie, the first doorway to yoga is, according to Shankar, is silence, mauna. You have to stop speaking. And if you saw that in your son or daughter, and you'd say, "Oh, I think you need a pill for that," you see, you're depressed. Well, there's plenty of reason to be depressed, but this is a healthy depression, you see, not wanting to follow in the way of others. A beautiful song in India puts it, to hope for help from friends and family provides no real solution. Don't you know that all are lost here? Everyone lives in pallid imitation of everyone else. So this pallid imitation of generations of doctors and lawyers and teachers and so forth is not the occupation of the Atman, which is pure and motionless, actionless, thoughtless, perfect, see. You could do the work of a doctor or a lawyer from the standpoint of the Atman without getting at all stained by that occupation. Imagine doing the work of a lawyer and not becoming stained by the political system. That's actually possible if you were saying, Naham, you see, I'm not. Naham manushyo na deva yaksho. I'm not a worker, I'm not a priest. You see, I'm not a warrior. See. That was rather the message that Arjuna was getting from Krishna, even though he was of the warrior caste, that just look upon yourself as the Atman and look upon all of those beings on both sides of the army as the Atman, and then do your duty. And then you won't be stained by karma, he said. Explains that very nicely in the first 3 or 4 chapters of the Gita. It's all about action and inaction, basically, and how to affect, how to squeeze more juice from your orange, as Vivekananda said. But I digress, in a sense, you see. Then he says, so Brahma, Vishnu, Indra, Shiva, those are all your powers. Maybe you've been taught maybe to look at them as gods and goddesses, 4-armed, 6-armed, 8-armed. Well, that's okay. It just means that they're very effective in what they're charged to do. You see, so but you should not look upon those as in some kingdom of heaven outside. They're in the kingdoms of heaven inside, and that's inside of every soul. It's inside of the one soul. God is not in the world is in God, would be a way of saying that, as Vivekananda put it. You can't find God here because God cannot be objectified, can't be turned into a form by nature. In fact, it's the other way around. Nature came out of God. See? And it came out of it via the Word, if you asked John, which probably learned the lesson well when Jesus told him, in the beginning was the world was with God, the world was God. But the beginning Jesus talked about, he didn't want that to represent his religion. He was a non-dualist. He was a sannyasin. The beginning means just apparent beginnings. When time kicks in, Maya is in operation. And that's what Buddha saw under the bo tree. Mara, he called it. Basically, the idea of death is an illusion. So, these powers are within you. You should get a hold of them and utilize them. Make your acquaintance with them. After repudiating all objective appearances superimposed on oneself, one remains alone as the Supreme Brahman. ekanta. See, love of lonely study. Full, non-dual, essentially inactive. So that's pretty much what my teacher's name means, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj. It's basically no residue left over from action after he passes, you see, because he's inactive during his life. Even when he acts, he's inactive. People suffer the effects of their actions when they invest themselves in their actions as the actor. And it's a bit confusing. It's a little bit thick there. Thick as a brick, so you have to thin it out. Curtain of nescience is thick, you see, in people. But it's made all the more fattened by brooding on ignorance and doubt and fear. But if you quit brooding on them, that curtain of nescience tends to thin, so you start to becomes translucent. You begin to see a light through it. Pretty soon it becomes transparent, and you can see your own self like looking in a mirror, which is probably what Hasta Amalaka felt his whole life. You see, he got the name Hasta Amalaka later from Shankara. Fruit in the palm of your hand, that's what that means. So you can see your own Atman, your own true nature, like you could see a fruit in the palm of your own hand, that clearly, your whole life. See, and he was seeing it since he was a young boy all the way through to his wandering around India with Shankara to help establish the 4 cardinal places of pilgrimage. It's beautiful stories, and this is recent. I mean, this is like 700 AD. That's very recent for India. And it's probably recent for the overall life of spirituality, which probably hasn't been seen since then. That's why, except maybe like Chaitanya and beings like that, and all of a sudden you get this full shine of truth, coming from these 3 that we've named our association after, SRV, you see, SRV associations, Sharda, Ramakrishna, and Vivekananda. And there you see the whole light of Brahman shining forth through the form, with no adjuncts and with no residue impeding it. So after repudiating all objective appearances superimposed on oneself, remain alone as the supreme Brahman, full, non-dual, essentially inactive. The world is a postulation, as good as non-existent. In the one reality that is immutable, formless, and unqualified, whence comes any difference? The mind is foisting those differences, compartmentalizing. 23. In the one reality that is devoid of distinctions, like percipient, perception, and perceived, that triputi, and of all sufferings, devoid of all sufferings as well, in the absolutely full spiritual self that is likened to the ocean at the time of cosmic dissolution, whence comes any difference? Upanishads slim everything down to a few words, but those few words, if you add a dozen of them, they strike you, and they have to be manana. See, they have to be rolled over in the mind. To if you roll them over in the mind long enough, then pretty soon you'll get the essence out of them. It's like taking raw gems and putting them in a cement mixer. You see, like the rock shops when I was a boy. You see, and they just roll and roll all day, and finally that takes off the outside, and you open it up, and there's these shining gems. You see, semi-precious. So you have to take off that outer coating. So in the same way, this wisdom might be a little bit coated by the interpolations of thousands of years, and if they are, you roll them over in your mind and you extract the essence. They shine for you. They become your whole life. I can attest to that. There's just nothing else on my mind except this all the time. And that's because I can't have Brahman on my mind all the time. I wouldn't be here if I could. You tend to sink and immerse into that, what you think about, you see. that which you think, as Master said in the Gospel, that you become. So if you're thinking lust and greed and envy and pride and jealousy and so forth, then that you become. Your nature becomes that. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, he who eats radish belches radish. So that's these worldly people, you see. But if you ingest only the pure food of Brahman, of Sacham, you see, and then you tend to be that yourself. You tend to walk around in that. That light, which is both a protective bubble and a light itself. If you look at Christ's teachings or any other great teacher, there can be contradictions there that you have to see through. You see, like saying one's don't strew pearls before swine, right? Oh, that's kind of too bad for those who are swine. See. But on the other hand, he said, what will it avail a man to gain a great light and hide it under a bushel? See? So all of a sudden you get this great light and you hide it away from everyone. Is everyone a swine? You definitely take unto yourself what is the Lord's and grant unto yourself what is Caesar's. You see, grant unto the world what Caesar, the world. You see, but then you want to take unto yourself what is the Lord's. So basically, you're going to have to use that discriminating power, where to shine your light and where to cover it. So, in this world, at least, it takes that kind of razor's-edged navigation. Om mutistata jagrata prapya vrani bodhata. See, approach the wise teachers and learn from them. Awaken, awaken. Because sharp as a razor's edge is the spiritual path and difficult to navigate. In another age, in a better world, it wouldn't be so difficult to navigate. It'd be clear to you. But this complex and exacerbated situation of gloom on top of gloom, which is Maya in this world of swine, has become very difficult to navigate. See? The last two that we took yesterday. Darkness implicit in it as the light, as in light, is the cause of delusion. But whence is difference in the supreme non-dual and unqualified reality? So where you're seeing darkness and light, one's implicit in the other, and the other is also implicit in the reverse. But when you get beyond this duality of darkness and light, or form and formlessness, then basically you'll see that one non-dual. Thine eye turns single and you see that one truth and you live in it. And in this uniform and supreme reality, how can the agent of differences dwell? That is, where does the ego go in that light? In deep sleep that is nothing but bliss, who is it that has perceived difference? So ego goes away in deep sleep. It comes dancing back when you attend dream and waking again. But it's gone temporarily gone, you see. So what was it to begin with if it's not all abiding, if it's not constant? What is constant in that state if the ego isn't, and the body isn't, and money isn't, see, and Donald Trump isn't, you see. Now all the Ku Klux Klan are getting all excited about Donald Trump. Did you hear? I don't read the paper or watch TV or anything, but I hear little snippets from people, you see. Boy, you see, I thought we were over that. See, they want to get rid of blacks, Hispanics, Jews, all over again. See, this is the world. We want to get rid of our brothers and sisters, our Sangha brothers and sisters. What to speak of just friends in the world who haven't had the chance to discover the light yet. It's bizarre. It's bizarre, and it's a bazaar. The bazaar of the bizarre. See, and it's you can't get sucked into it. It's not real. People go out and they'll carry signs and they'll yell and they'll scream and everything. Grant unto Caesar, take unto yourself what is the Lord, and stand back and be a witness and then teach others to be a witness. This world isn't something to fight for, it's something to fight against. Because a world doesn't exist in reality. It only exists in non-reality. It's something that we haven't really learned, you see. We're so habituated to world and body, to containers, you see, for consciousness, to upadis, and upadis do what? First two words of this Upanishad. They create false superimpositions that aren't real, see, because you are always the eternal, indivisible, unbridled, unbounded self, see, pure and perfect at all times. You are one with your Father, or one with Divine Mother, and nothing can change that. So what are you going to allow to change that? See, are you going to allow that change to come upon you, unasked, unavoided? You keep up vigil in this world, and you remain pure and sinless, stainless. So, beautifully put in 24 and 25. Chapter 1, I think there really is only one chapter, or prakarana they call it in Sanskrit, of this Upanishad. We have 64 slokas in it, and we're already to number 25, so about a little over a third of the way through. We'll take some more today, and we'll take some more next week in 2 classes. We'll make our way towards the middle of it and feel like we're surrounded by the protection of the Upanishad. See, the knowledge. Nahi gyanena sudrishyam pavitram iha vidyate. See, that this wisdom is protecting us from ignorance. It's actually destroying ignorance. But make sure there's no residue that comes back from that ignorance. You say, oh, my ignorance is gone, utterly gone. You better mean it. And don't find yourself a year later suffering again under some misconception or some illusion or some politician, you see, or some space race, you see, into the unreal ether, you see. I chanted this morning, the great ether, the Mahakasha, the great ether of consciousness. That doesn't change. That you can explore. That you can bank on. That's your bedrock. All the rest is sand. Can't build a house on sand. So if you get that right, then you're called a consummate non-dualist. And there will be no lives of birth and death and ignorance for you forevermore. Say peace to all, from me, no danger be to aught that lives. Those who dwell on high, those who lowly keep, I am the self in all. All life, both here and there, do I renounce. All heavens, all earths, all hells, all hopes and all fears. Thus, cut thy bonds, sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. So let's look at what a sannyasin is about again. Remember yesterday's class, we ended in the very middle of Swami Sheshananda's wonderful renunciation statements. Some of them, I didn't get much of his face on there, I'm sorry, but his words were more important than his face. Our founder Lex Hickson said that. The best of me is in my books. And that can only be said of an illumined soul, because the illumined souls, their personalities going to begin to disappear. They're not going to say much about themselves or blow their own trumpet or laud themselves. They're going to point to the seers and the saints and the scriptures and tell you to follow. And that's true for 2,000 years. If you can develop the ability to see through the text torturing in the Bible, then you'll still find some of those kernels of truth. We all love Jesus, see. But the path of Jesus, or Christianity itself, we don't love that anymore. How can you love it when you're going to hell, eternal damnation, and your soul is created out of dust and such nonsense? If you take it metaphorically, fine. Literally, it's not going to work, see. Literally, you can take the sayings of the Upanishads, every one of them that I've said today, can take it as the literal truth, without coverings, without residue. And this is the Sanatana Dharma of the ancient Aryans, you see. Even before the Aryans, probably, the Tantrasists had this Sanatana Dharma in India, which was then called Bharat, before it was called India. Hindus, India, British gave that name. So Hinduism is a dualistic religion just like Christianity. But Vedas and Upanishad and so forth, those go beyond Hinduism. They go back to a land called Bharat, which means the eternal. Bharatavarsha, the eternal speech, that is the Sanskrit came out of it and so forth. So these have been reliable for thousands and thousands of years prior to Jesus and prior to Buddha coming. Buddha was even 550 years prior to Christ. So India was there on the scene throughout all these ages with these great seers and so forth. So we looked at Jesus' renunciation sayings yesterday. They were beautiful, and a lot of them were reminded to us by Matthew, who must have himself taken them very seriously to put them in his gospel. Then we went through about half of Swami Sheshananda's. My reason for putting these two side by side was to see an ancient sannyasin. Let's forget about son of God and all that, because all of us are sons of God and daughters of God and of the Divine Mother. All of us are. We just chanted that. The Atman, same in quality and in quantity in everyone and in everything. But it's not a person and it's not an object. That's all. It's the underlying substratum in everything. And it's equal, equal, equal. Samadarshitvam. That's why Krishna mentions it over and over in the Gita about sthiti pragnasya and the equality of all beings and so forth. It's just when it comes out into the vehicles that it gets delimited, or adjuncts start falling over it, false superimpositions get accepted, and then it doesn't look like itself anymore. See? All the way down to the Hitlers and Attila the Huns and so forth. It doesn't look like itself anymore. It looks like a caricature of that. But strip away enough of that layer and you'll find that same Atman in everyone and everything. So that's why Christ and others were not judgmental of sinners and adulterers and so forth. Vivekananda was said to have walked through the Spanish red light district by accident when he was visiting Spain, and prostitutes were coming up to him and propositioning him, and he started weeping. And one said, "Why are you weeping, sir?" He says, "I just really am so sorry for the state you've fallen into." They really, feel that deepest in their heart when they see people suffering, having to do things that are ignoble and against their true nature, forced to do that in some cases because of this Maya, because of this collective mind and its many, many overlays and false superimpositions. So he used to say that. He used to actually say, it's the sin we hate, not the sinner. See, that's one of his sayings. It's the sin we hate, not the sinner. So, because really the sinner is not a sinner at all. It's a false superimposition over who you truly are. And if you dig deep enough in any person, right down to the man sitting on the bar drunk, you'll find beneath there the Atman. See, if you dig deep enough. Like Ramakrishna said, if somebody's drunk, then you use rice water, to dilute the alcohol in their system, right? He said, but don't give it to them all at once. Give it to them in little drinks, you see. So he's talking about people waking up from the sleep of ignorance. You see, they're intoxicated with lust and greed and envy and pride and selfishness and so forth. If you bring them back all at once, it's like bringing a drunkard back all at once. He's got a headache the next day. A hangover, they call it, you see. There's a lot hanging over them, like false superimpositions. But if you bring him back just a little bit throughout the night, bring him back to his senses a little bit, he doesn't have that hangover the next day, and he's back to his old self again, as it were. So this intoxication needs to be, stage by stage, sloughed off, like a snake gets out of its skin. I've watched that before, the whole process, and it takes a while, and a lot of scraping and wriggling and rubbing against rocks. That's what Lord Buddha said. A fish taken out of the lake thrashes about a lot on land, you see, before it finally flops itself back into the lake. So that's the struggling soul, and it's a necessary bit of suffering if you've fallen into such shallow waters. See, I want to get back to the depths. So my reason again for putting this side by side is a great soul like Jesus 2,000 years ago. Forget the Son of God bit. Just look at him as a free soul when there was no Christianity, no false superimpositions of religion over him. And what he said, birds have nests, foxes have holes, I have not come to bring peace, I've come to bring a sword. All these beautiful sayings that he, grant unto Caesar what is Caesar, take unto yourself what is the Lord. We went through them all. And then take a look at another free soul that was a Jivan Mukta. It's the Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta in a Jivan Mukta. What did it look like to me and to some of us here who sat with Swami Sheshanandaji over those 40 or so more years that he was here in Portland and on the mainland. Mainland means on this continent. I'm from Hawaii, so we call you all the mainlanders, you see. What did it look like that to be in front of him and hear him? Here's some of the things he said. We've taken up some of them. We ended with this one. The Judeo-Christian faith is a dualistic faith. Why dualistic? Because it accepts that behind the body and mind complex there is an underlying reality called the soul. But that is just the ego. They mistake it for the soul. It is that ego-mind complex that dreams itself from heaven to earth to hell. Now, these things would come spilling out of his mouth, dozens at every minute. Everything he said was like this. And he graduated from St. Paul's College in India. You see, a Christian college he went to graduate. And turned sannyas and then came to America. So sort of like Sri Aurobindo, going to America, his parents taking him there when he was just a young little boy, and then graduating top of his class in the Ivy League colleges in England, and then going back to India in his 20s and bringing America back, you see, and Western education back to India and its problems. And then here you have Swami Sheshananda doing much the same thing, only as a monk and as a sannyasin. So it's a beautiful thing to say, and it's a bit stark at first, because everywhere we think we're worshiping God this and God that, but it's basically God the dog. I saw that being worshipped the other night, walking around, spending so much time on their dogs, or it's God the bicycle, or it's God the politician, or it's God this, God that. None of those are God. God can't be in a form, see. So when we say God is within me, we're really saying the ego, see. Most of the time, that's what we're really saying. And if we were totally selfless like Sri Ramakrishna was and said it, then we'd mean it. God is in me, as my very self. I and my Father are one. That would be a Advaita Vedanta statement. But most people are guilty of false superimposition. They're saying God, it's really the ego that's saying that and experiencing that. So we have to see this, you see, and quit being so dualistic. See, have a non-dualistic experience for a change. And right now you're getting a qualified non-dualistic experience for about 3 hours with me this morning. So this is a step towards. You might have come in here thinking, God and I are separate and never the two shall meet. You see, I'll never find. And you came in here and all of a sudden you say, I'm the vine and he's the vine and I'm the branch. You see, that's qualified non-dualism. But eventually, if you turn into a state like they were in, then it's I and my Father are one. He says here, you will not solve the problems of mankind through acceptance of evolution, but only through acceptance of involution. Evolution always presupposes change, but reality must be changeless. So that's why I keep saying about our quantum physics and so forth in science, it's not fair, you see, that evolution only and then nothing out in space. You end up out in space as nothing. Your soul was nothing, your intelligence was nothing, your mind was nothing, your ego was nothing, your body, of course, was nothing. So you end up as nothing. Began as nothing, end up as nothing. Well, I mean, if you understand that in a non-dual sense, it's not that bad. But non-duality, that nothingness is essence, you see, Buddha nature. It's underlying consciousness and everything, out of which, that emptiness out of which all this apparent fullness came. But if you're saying it in terms of just evolution only, that you were a paramecium and then a salamander and then a monkey and an ape and so forth, and through 15 million years, which is just a tiny little fragment of the time the world has been here, you ended up as a human being, but then you have to go to Hastramalaka. You see, Naham Manusho na Deva Yaksho. I'm not a human. Don't call me a human. There's a whole big Hollywood false superimposition going on. Is that, in order to be human, we have to be emotional and we feel, and we're different than the aliens up there if they even exist, because we feel and they don't. Get over that feeling. You don't want to be human. You want to be divine. Try experiencing your divine nature for a change, and then you'll be like them. These weren't like any humans we ever met. Certainly he wasn't, I can attest. Walk up to him and he'd yell at you. First thing. If you believe in original sin, then get out of my ashram, as he told me. The first thing he said to me. And I said, Swami, I don't believe in that. I've come to learn. He said, good. He smiled. So anger is gone like smoke on the wind, as they say. See, but he wanted to check you out. He used to say, almost every day in the ashram I was there, he'd come down the hall and say, "This is not a social club." If he saw anyone even looking at each other or talking to each other, he would explode like that and get you back on point. Not in his monastery or ashram. You didn't do that there. If you went outside and beyond his control, then that's up to you. But not in his ashram. You were there for one thing and one thing only, and that was to realize the truth. So that's the training we got, and it's what we needed. Both Lex and I, our founder, Lex Sixen, went there to him. He was much our senior, and of course, an advanced monk in monastic life, and also, we thought, a Jivanmukta, a free soul. Who else but a free soul could be so insensitive to your ego that you thought was God? See? Well, I'll just knock this out of them, you see, and I don't care what they think. He used to say, the power of doing will not help the individual unless the power of being is blended with it. Sort of like Shankara, 1,000 acts, 100,000 acts will not get you enlightenment. Nor will 100,000 asanas or 1,000,000 breathing exercises. You have to realize this beyond those mechanisms. Next, without renunciation you can never find true happiness. Without renunciation you cannot find true joy. Without renunciation you cannot attain Jivanmukta, freedom in this life, in this very body. And renunciation is gained through Jnana Yoga. He put his eggs in one basket in that respect. He says, you get rid of ignorance with knowledge, not with love, not with meditation, and not with action. You get rid of it through knowledge. It's the quickest and best and most thorough purifier. And the God of love said so. Nahi gyanena sudrishyam pavitramiha vidyate. You look in the Gita, Krishna, the God of love, the Bhakta path and all that, supposedly, is saying the best purifier of all is knowledge. See? And he means knowledge with a capital K, or might be better put in English, wisdom, spiritual wisdom. See? Not lower knowledge, aparavid, but paravid. And guess what? It's what we're missing in schools and in upbringing. Did anyone here ever get a paravidya from their parents? A very, very rare soul, and if they did, it would have been because their great-grandmother or their grandmother or grandfather had seen Vivekananda or had been alive when the Vedanta was brought over, and they started getting this truth, unaltered, see, unalloyed truth from some source. Sri Krishna again says in the Gita, the wind blows scents from different flowers. Nobody knows where they come from. Just like that, I move amongst beings, undetected. See? So you're going to have to find that undetected and detect it somewhere in some great flower. The lotus blooming in the woods, you see. You have to find that and go there like a bee to hear that. Because a great band of musician comes into town and sets up and plays, and then they leave. Those people who happened to be around when they heard the music, heard the best music of their lives, went to run and tell their friends came running, band had already left town. Swamiji has left the building. See? No more music there. See? Then you have to get it secondhand, from some other source. And you hope that it's a pure source and you get it as a transmission. So, renunciation is gained through Jnana Yoga. It's very important, especially for an ignorance-ridden society. Ignorance isn't like slapping you in the face, calling you stupid. Ignorance is that you've never seen your true nature yet. You've seen everything but. And, kudos to you, applause to you for discovering everything in the universe and naming it, But you don't know the inner universe next, and you don't know the absolute after that. 3 worlds here, not just one. There are 3 bodies here, not just one. So then you have to go to a great soul and learn. If you're still a spiritual infant, see, and haven't awoken to the kingdoms of heaven within you, or forgotten them, what to speak of Brahman itself, then you have to go and learn. Apprentice yourself, just like any other workman would with a master. He was such a master. He says, do not just realize the real, realize the ideal. That's definitely a Swami Sheshananda-ism, you see. I haven't heard that anywhere else. And it's very beautiful because to idealize the real is pretty good. Good, best, better style. But to realize the ideal, there can be nothing better than that. You're not just living in a sort of idealism which could be sort of naive, you see, and wide-eyed, and sort of innocent, But you actually realized the ideal and you became a knower of truth, a living, liberated soul, Jivan Mukta. He says, affirmation must be followed up by spiritual practices and disciplines in order to be effective. A little bit of a slap in the face, those who say, well, I think I just learned a Mahavakya, Tattvamasi, which is coming up in the next few slokas. They take Tattvamasi apart here in two or three slokas in this Upanishad. So basically, it's not enough just to hear that, that thou art, or I am Brahman, or any other Mahavakya, and walk away happy, naive again, you see. But there's still residue back there, right? You're idealizing the real. But to realize the ideal, you're going to have to follow that affirmation up with practice to prove it. You've seen the movie about Srinivasan Ramanujan, called The Man Who Knew Infinity or Saw Infinity. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. It was just out recently. It's an independent movie, of course. You didn't see it in main theaters, but it's about this master mathematician whose all his theorems, which were far advanced beyond the Ivy League college professors in England and America, got them straight from Divine Mother. So he just wrote them down. He was having visions and meditation about them. So he came to show them to some people in India, who then put him in touch with some Ivy League professors, and one of them championed him, brought him to England, and the mathematicians looked at these and said, these are impossible. Where did you get these? And prove them. He said, I can't prove them. They're revelation. And they didn't understand that, you see, and they couldn't put their trust in them. Anyway, it goes on like that. He's an Indian man, and has suffered a lot for doing that. He actually ended up proving, with the help of this professor, proving a few of them, and got to be the first non-Caucasian fellow of those colleges that he was going to in England. The Trinity College, I think they call it, see, in England. If you were going to Trinity College, you couldn't walk across the grass to get to the other side if you weren't a fellow. All the students had to go around the long way, see. So when he first came there, he walked out in the grass and they scolded him, see. Later on, he's not only a fellow, he's a what? Royal fellow, you see. What a royal fellow he was. So, and he, was the first, and I don't know, maybe still the only non-Caucasian So beautiful movie about this Indian man. If you love India and you love Vedas and so forth, and he was saying that Mother Saraswati granted me these visions, these mathematical theorems which people couldn't understand in the world, way ahead of his time. See? So see that movie if you want. It's very well done too. Those of you who have gone to India with me and love that, and you'll feel like you're back there again in some of those scenes. So affirmation must be followed by discipline, practice, to prove it. You see, not only that proof for yourself, but for others too, who are following behind. Your real self is infinite, not finite. Your real self is immortal, not mortal. Your real self is divine, not sinful. Your real self is birthless as well as deathless. Classic Swami Sheshananda. And then he says here, I do not believe in salvation and in post-mortem emancipation. I believe in Jivan Mukta. Eternal liberation even here in this very body. See? So it does not believe in a post-mortem emancipation, not freedom in the future. That's not going to happen. Future doesn't exist, really. It's a projection of the mind. You have to get it right here and right now, and through that practice that proved the affirmation. You see how all these sayings connect to one another and prove themselves. We have a few minutes left. Buddhism stresses self-effort. Christianity places the accent on grace, but Sri Ramakrishna was always harmonizing, saying grace and self-effort must go hand in hand. That's Vedanta, you see. This congealing of all the great thoughts of all the great minds, regardless of religion and religious differences and so forth. Having to look for the best of all and then synthesize them, integrate them for the amelioration of the highest good of humanity, loka sangraha. So beautiful that he could be from India and therefore know Buddhism so well, and then take his degree in a Christian college, and then come here and put it together with his own chosen ideal of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Okay, 4 more minutes. Will this chart get finished in this half? With, I think, just 3 more slokas. Let's try. If this one, no, it's going crazy on me, so it's hard to do this. I think I'm going to have to read it sideways. As long as you live within the framework of time, space, and causation, you are not free. Freedom will come only when you transcend. Swami Vivekananda observed that the scientific achievement of the West, as well as the theological tradition of the West, both belong to what is called aparavidya, lower knowledge. So you're not getting higher knowledge from science, nor are you getting it from the church. You have to get that from an illumined soul. That's the Guru. Here at Guru Purnima, then we say that you only get that. As Vivekananda put it, I can kind of paraphrase it. You cannot get illumination, enlightenment from books or temples and so forth. You must get it from another soul. It must be a direct transmission from another soul. Then, I have lived in this country since 1947, and it is my prayer that the American people begin spiritual disciplines in their individual lives, in their family, and in their social lives, and in their national lives. Discipline. There can be no true freedom without discipline. So teach your children from the cradle to the grave to live a life of self-control and self-discipline. That's basically, might as well become our motto here at SRV, because we don't have a monastic line yet, although Lex and I talked about it for the future. We're householders basically, and some of us are sort of transcendent of the householder phase and have moved on into a sort of forest dweller kind of phase, like a vanaprastha. Whatever the case may be, we're not I've often made the observance that when I go to household to households, the one thing I see missing is sadhana, self-effort, spiritual self-effort. And getting together and reading a little bit out of the Bible does not really qualify for that. You have to practice what you read. And you have to have an illumined soul reading it to you or telling it to you like we did in hymn. It says a precious mother, a child of Holy Mother came to us. See, I used to fly to Portland from Hawaii and so forth to come down to the ashram and teach, you see. And when I flew over Portland, I'd had to salute it because an illumined soul, my teacher, had lived there for so many years, decades. So I would have to treat Portland as a holy city. So I don't really accept, keep Portland weird or whatever the slogan is. You see. I say make Portland wise. And if you had a great soul like Swami Sheshananda living amidst you all this time and you hadn't found out about him yet, then something's definitely wrong. See, the ignorance is too thick there, and people aren't moving toward the truth. Last one then, I think. What hinders freedom? It is ignorance. We are princes, but we are all behaving like beggars on account of this delusion that has overtaken us. It is like spiritual amnesia. In Vedanta we call it avidya, ignorance. You must know that there is no word for sin in India. All this suffering is on account of avidya, ignorance, and egotism, asmita. So then one of our students coined a nice phrase. He said, omniscience or omniscience. Take your pick. It's all from the word. And the word is the word of the wise, you see. But it can be, if you don't hear it, it's like omniscience. If you do hear it, it's omniscience. So here we will take our break and come back in 15 minutes. The live streaming audience can view these charts up close as we break for some prasad, some sanctified food and pure drinking water. Thank you. sense activities here. We welcome you back, Swagatam, to this second half of the class on the Adhyatma Upanishad. It's the second class of the weekend, Saturday, yesterday. By the way, there were some technical difficulties with the sound in the first half yesterday we heard about after the fact. And so look on the YouTube in the future for a revised version of that. We're going to restore it, and it'll be off the live streaming site for now, and we'll have Mahesh or someone here probably fix that and put it back up soon as we can, so we can keep this series of Adhyatma Upanishad going. So you can look back on these slokas, of which now we have made our way through 25, and 26 talks about dissolution. This perception of difference, in fact, this is the last of those 5 or 6 slokas that talks about difference and non-difference. And we're taking it separately so that we can look at dissolution a little closer. This perception of difference is rooted in the mind. There is none of it in the absence of the mind. Therefore, dissolve the mind in the Supreme Self as the eternal subject. So, as I've often said lately, take your attention off the infernal object and put it on the eternal subject, or infernal exterior and the internal interior, kings of heaven within, and expand your horizons, spiritually speaking, inwardly, because science and so forth, and even like Swami Sheshananda said, even theology in the West, dualistic fundamentalist Christianity, is really focusing on the outside. It's not giving you these teachings that it is the duty of religion and philosophy to give you, but very hard to find authentic religion in America that wasn't originally in cahoots with politics when America was discovered, as it were. And so we find that our politics and our religion is both tinged with that. But there's a different kind of tinge that's they're talking about here in 30. It is characterized by omniscience tinged with transcendence, and is the truth all abiding. So that's a better kind of flavoring that you want to bring to life and mind, is this omniscience, or this transcendental state, this non-dual state, this elation I was talking about yesterday, that when you hear these words, your heart gets inspired, your mind gets inspired, and you feel like there's nothing like it anywhere in the 3 worlds. And it's that which you will remedy all illnesses and diseases, whether they be of the body or of the prana or of the mind or of the intellect. You'll remedy them with that. But back to 26. Therefore, dissolve the mind in the Supreme Self as the eternal subject. So, of course, we'd want to show the dissolution of the mind stream chart again. I'll show you a different kind of dissolution chart. We won't go into this deeply, but just enough to say that it shows all the 25 or 24 or 26, depending on how you count them, tattvas, or principles, insentient stations that consciousness moves through, is what I like to say, on these lists of 5 elements first, 10 senses, that's 2 times 5. You have the active senses, and you have the cognitive senses. Cognitive senses are connected more directly to the brain, that is, seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling. Those powers have a lot of force in them. They would seem almost to be sentient, and people are taking them to be sentient because they fasten on the external objects. Mundaka Upanishad says that that anterior to life and mind is this Atman. And so before these ever came about, there was this underlying consciousness. And it also says these five senses are defective because they're outward going. But it doesn't immediately go on to say, as some of the Upanishads would teach, or other darshanas of India, that there are also inward senses. That's taken up later. So you have five outer senses, and you have five inner senses, and you have five outer elements, and you have five inner elements. That's the idea. And you simply connect that to waking and dream, and all of a sudden dream becomes another state of your consciousness, and that might give you a key to where the kingdoms of heaven within are located. You see, your dream state. And it just seems dreamlike to you and foggy because you haven't really learned how to operate consciousness through those inner senses yet, as readily as you can hear. Like I can see pretty well and I can hear. These senses will go defective in old age, maybe even sooner. But those inner senses can just get awakened and sharpened exponentially all the way back to causal senses, if you want to put it there. I don't know that anyone's ever mentioned them, but that would be sort of like audibility, tangibility, and so forth. Luminosity, homogeneity, and so forth. That's what's back in the cosmic mind, how the cosmic mind sees. It sees without eyes and hears without ears and so forth. And that only happens at a very high level where consciousness itself is in charge, and it doesn't need these adjuncts, see, especially these external adjuncts anymore. And you're like that too when you go in, you abandon your five senses and you take on five subtle senses, and if you abandon those, you'll take on these inner principles. You'll see the cosmic mind, Mahat, the great, they call it, and that's individual and collective is all really connected back into that, and that would be Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara. I mean, the cosmic mind would be like the Trinity, also like the cosmic egg, Hiranyagarbha, or even like Om, the word is rather like that. That is, the Mahat would be very, very aware of Om as being the origin of all things, because Brahman cannot be an origin. See, it's beyond origins, beginnings, middles, and ends, and all that. It doesn't operate that way. It doesn't operate at all. It just is. So you'd have to go back to principles like Om and Mahat and Hiranyagarbha, Tantra, the Shiva and Shakti in union, those kinds of things to find the intelligent principle where it's concentrated most. So enough to say that all of these sets of fives, the tanmatras next, the subtle elements, odor, flavor, visibility, tangibility, and audibility, via the five pranas flowing inward become psychic prana. It takes you to the fourfold mind, or fivefold if you add Mahat to it. So it's all sets of fives or quintuplication. So this was one of the books I put out recently, and right on the tail of that I put out Gyanamatra to show the intelligence that's moving, and right after that I put out the quintuplication, cosmic quintuplication book, all little books, same size with charts in them, and kind of a manual for the West right now to understand these very abstruse, that is, esoteric principles. We wish they weren't so esoteric, but as long as you have to grant unto Caesar what is Caesar's and take unto yourself what is the Lord's, they'll remain esoteric, and you'll have to hide some under a bushel for a while and bring them out when the swine aren't gathering, see, and the buzzards aren't gathering. When you have some pure souls around, you bring them out and say, well, look at this, consider this, meditate upon this, and use this to get yourself free. Freedom up there where bondage began, in the mind. Brahman isn't neither free nor bound. If you continue on, then the Mahat even has sets of fives in it. Projection, sustenance, dissolution, time, space, causation, and then it has these other fives: solidity, liquidity, luminosity, homogeneity, and all-pervasiveness. Now you can connect earth to smell, to odor, and right on through. You see, all 5 connect to the next 5. And in the Adhyatma Upanishad, you find out that some great soul did this work, this thinking process, and put it out there, and then showed how one set of 5 depends upon the next, and those 10 depend on the next, and so it's all connected in one 24 to 25 cosmic principle system, originally proposed by Lord Kapila, but probably there long before Kapila brought it forward as a system, just like yoga was there long before Patanjali brought the 8-limbed version of it forward. Because you have 18 yogas in Krishna's Gita, and that was, several thousand years before Patanjali. So this is Bharata again, this eternal, the land of eternal religion, which Sri Ramakrishna, who is the paragon of universality and so forth, said that the eternal Dharma, Sanatana Dharma of India will live forever. It has always been in existence, and it will live forever. So he was pointing out the eternal nature and the great power of that, of the thinking of those original rishis. Just like no Christianity when Christ was there, and he had to exemplify it, just like no India and no particular one path to go along when these rishis were there. They just pretty much wrote the paths themselves, but they had to take it from within them, right? Within them, what was eternal within them, plus their lives they lived as householders, the rishis, many of them, with children, and how they passed that on. That's what Asheshananda is saying he wants to see the Americans do. If America is going to keep existing as a country, and if it's going to vindicate itself of all the evils that it's perpetuating right now, and if it also wants to become a great nation, a truly great nation, then this is the path. It's been revealed to us by Swami Vivekananda in this rare lifetime that he takes to bring it to us. So, dissolution of the mind stream, I'll show you it in another version, but first let me just summate all of this, because Mahat goes into Om, and Om goes into Atman. Find the Om inside of yourself, you see, is the saying. And then all of that in the ocean of Brahman, and that's Kaivalya. That is isolation from all things with form into your formless true nature, and back here is association with, or worse than that, identification with samsara. So samsara pragbara, Kaivalya pragbara, which stream do you want to get on? See, where do you want to swim? In murky waters or in pristine, life-giving waters of life? See. And this is in the book, Dissolution of the Mind Stream, which you can get here at SRV. Present teacher here being the author of that. And we've looked at this enough, but let's read this final quote to summate it all. The classic and comprehensive meditation in yoga and Vedanta dissolves the elements into the senses, 5 elements, that's air, earth, fire, water, ether, into the senses into the subtle elements into the prana into the mind into the great mind into Om, the word. Find Om in the self and dissolve that self into the great self, Brahman. Very beautifully put. And why would you dissolve each 5 into the next 5, into that final one? Because they're connected, and you've lost connections with those connections. You don't think about smell and earth. You don't think about taste and water. You don't think about fire and sight. You just see, taste, touch, and smell. And that leaves these things unconnected. See? So there's a reason why you do this. And it's really a mental practice. It's not like you have to go out and get a dirt clod and put it into a glass of water and mix it up and say, oh, I see. And then put it over fire and cook it, you see. That's a physics laboratory or biologist laboratory and so forth. You want to do this inside of yourself in the mind, because these all have come from the mind. If you're just playing with them after they've already reached the form of an object, then that's all you're accomplishing. And it's based in millions of subatomic particles changing at a billionth of a second, and there's really no conclusion you can draw there that's very helpful to anyone. You haven't reached the U and M of Om, much less mastered the A of Om, the waking state. There's this waking state is always rising up constantly. Constant change, he said, right? You renounce it because of its constant change, and then you go to something more permanent, and then more permanent inside of that. And so it's a great art, and like I say, I don't even know that, I don't think I coined that phrase. I think I heard it somewhere, although I look places and try and find mention of it, dissolving the mind stream, but I think it's been there all along. And the top, Lord Copula's Samkhya system is probably the best way of thinking of that. And then you follow it up with yoga. If someone were to put Samkhya together with Patanjala, that is the 8-limbed yoga, then they'd get the idea that you should meditate on those tattvas. But Copula's system, he's not really having you meditate on them, he's just stating them, so that you can sort of get the idea. And probably back in his age, people would go, oh yeah, I remember that, now I'll connect them. But here it's so disconnected that you need to follow it up by systems which are several thousand years apart from each other. When Patanjali looked back on Samkhya and he said, well, let's call these, instead of air, earth, fire, water, and ether, let's call them alambanas. That means a station to meditate upon. We need something to meditate upon. Meditating on your formless nature doesn't always work, you might have noticed. And maybe it'll give you some emptiness and a little light, but that doesn't last. See? So there must be some missing things back here that I should connect together. So it's a great art, it's ancient, it's in this day and age probably a little bit unclear, as to why you're doing it and how you should do it. So we offer that anyway. SRV offers that to the world to look into. But a little bit more towards yoga is this chart, states of dissolution of the mind in yoga. Is that straight now? Is it? Okay.
Oh, no, actually.
It's a little cattywampus.
That's halfway.
Alrighty. Let's look at Father of Yoga when he looked at Samkhya and back, how he talked about dissolving the mind stream. You could almost look at these two charts and say, gee, what happened in 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years when Father of Yoga was born in that particular incarnation, and looked back and said, what have we accumulated through over all of this? And probably said, ay, oy vey. Not a lot of wisdom, that's for sure. Maybe a lot of lower knowledge. We've been able to bring together mechanics and certain aspects of lower knowledge, but we probably haven't accumulated higher knowledge, and since we haven't, we've actually accumulated a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. And there you see them there. I can call this up. And you see, and I'll go through it quickly, there's the 5 obstacles. That is attachment, egotism, ignorance, aversion, and clinging to life, the famous 5 kleshas. I even have a version of that in Buddhism called kileshas. It's because maybe even where Patanjali sort of modeled it after his admiration of Lord Buddha. Because remember, Buddhism wasn't a different religion to the Indians. I've told you before, I go to India, and my students in India have Buddha on their altar, and if I say, oh, are you a Buddhist too? They say, what's that? It's if like, Buddha's ours, belongs to us. He's Indian. Sort of like us saying in America, Christ is blue-eyed and blonde-haired, right? No. See, probably dusky-skinned and olive-eyed and so forth. So Middle Eastern, see. So it's kind of one of the problems of advancing time to falsely superimpose, and that even on that level, over appearances and so forth, appearances. But anyway, Patanjali, looking back to Buddhism, saw the kileshas and said, well, that's a good system, I should borrow it and probably modify it. Anyway, you see, and I'm going through this quickly because we've had yoga retreats where we've taken this chart and about a dozen others to task, gone through them days and hours at a time. But look at how these 5 are connected to the imbalanced mind. If you have an imbalanced mind, then this is what you're suffering, basically. Ignorance being the head of the row. And you're going to have to deal with that in order to get your mind healed. See? So it's very sick in the kshipta. It's risking scatteredness, like iron filings without a magnet. You see, there's nowhere to gather around, and it's going further and further like mustard seeds spread by the wind out of a package, and it's the reason why people are born mentally imbalanced and worse. And they have to live that lifetime because that arrow has been shot out of the bow, and they're not going to get their mind back in that lifetime. It's nothing you can do to help them. So you have to keep them close to holy company so that when they live through that lifetime, there's another samskara been created next to that one that's being worked through. You see, so when they're born the next time, they might just go ahead and default to it. That is, holy company has been there as their other association. Someone has loved them and treated them well, kept them close to the fire of Brahman, as Shankara says. And so when this old karma gets worked out, then they may have this route open. You see, so there is an efficacy and a reason, a great, profound reason to work with these people. Now, basically, these three kinds of minds, you can't learn yoga. Vedavyas, Patanjali, all the great souls will say they don't want you. You see. So Vivekananda said, take a look at you and say, I don't want you, I don't want your child, I want your grandchild, because he knew that there had to be some lifetimes passed where you would work out this karma, and then you'd be fit for these teachings. If all of us in America were fit for these teachings 30 years ago when I started teaching them, we would be enlightened long ago. We would have heard it a few times and went, oh, I remember now, you see. But such is the thickness of Maya in this society, in this country, and in this world, in this Kali Yuga, that's how difficult it is to work through it. Now, the positive side of that is if you can work through it in this lifetime, as Sheshananda was wanting us to do, then you can do it anywhere and at any time. You see, on another world, in another lifetime, in another level of consciousness, simple to get through false superimpositions and see the truth. But here it's the densest, so if you've done it here, you've done it once for all times. And it's why the gods have to come back from their lifetime as gods to visit the earth and have one more birth. Because they have some false superimposition in the form of Aishvarya, lordship, domination over hundreds and thousands of souls, rulership of whole lands of the kingdoms of heaven within, not to speak of just a little mud puddle like this that Donald Trump wants to get a hold of. You see, this is nothing. It's not even real. But the gods come back from their inner life, you see, and then they will come here and have a human birth and vindicate themselves of all these evils, or better themselves and transcend all of their powers. You see, when a man, Patanjali said, and Vivekananda used to quote him, when a man gives up the 8 occult powers, then he reaches the rain cloud of virtue. That you don't see in our politicians and businessmen and people today, if ever. You see, very rare. The rain cloud of virtues, compassion for others, service of them, putting your money at their, using your money to help them, and you don't see that. It's all selfish and motivated by selfish intentions. It's not selfless and open. So anyway, these kinds of minds, 3 kinds of mind, we have a very problem. At the level of mudha mind, dull mind, you have these 4 distractions and these 9 impediments. Things like sorrow, despair, unsteadiness of body, uneven breathing. That is, you can't sit still, you can't meditate. If you can't breathe right, you can't get your prana under your control. So you got to sit and breathe until you can do this, you replace the old habit of restlessness with this new habit of steadiness, that's all. That's that simple. And then you're fit for sitting and breathing, you see, and those are the first 4 limbs of yoga, and then you can get to pratyahara. Then you have your energy together and you can say, I think I'll renounce these objects. I think I'll take them out of my mind, out of sight, out of mind. And you shut your eyes and you shut off your mind, and then you get dharana, the ability to concentrate, and you're pretty much on this inner road of yoga by then, and nothing's going to stop you. There may be a few subtle residues in there. but basically you're on your way. The 9 impediments of the dull mind, you see: disease, complacency, and doubt. Disease and complacency in the body, doubt, negligence, idleness, sensuality in the mind, confusion in the intellect, and alabdhabhumikatva and anavastitatvani in the spirit, in the soul, as it were. So these are things like disease, complacency, doubt, negligence, idleness, sensuality, and confusion. Confusion in the intellect, as I was mentioning both yesterday and today. He called it Bhranti Darshana. Darshana to see, Bhranti confused or deluded. So confused seeing, see. If an eye be single, that will go away. You'll see everything rightly. And then these 2, backsliding and not making spiritual progress. Alabdhabhumikatva and anavastitatvani, 2 spiritual problems. So he listed them very nicely. And again, some of these reflect a little bit of the Buddhistic period prior to him. Some of these are his own observation in his own time, some 600-700 years later probably. And he had several births too. The birth which he was called Patanjali, so he did this Patanjali system, but later he was born as Shankara's teacher. So a little known fact, he was named Govindapada. So every 500 or 600 years he's coming back. So is Vedavyas to bring these Upanishads and Vedanta back, you see. So these souls have this long-range regimen, this long-range view, this plan, this method, this bringing of light into the darkness, again and again and again. And yes, it's not going to make a difference to an unreal world, but it is going to make a difference to souls who are awakening because of realizing that the world is unreal. Where would you go if you realized the world was unreal and had no one tell you about anything better? See, that's the message of Guru Purnima. See, that's why we salute Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Sri Ramakrishna, Swamiji, Holy Mother. That's it right there, see. As if they didn't keep doing this, then those of us who did develop the wherewithal, some higher intelligence, to realize that this is all nothing, in the end amounts to nothing, that it's all holes in the ground where foxes and birds can go, but we have no place to lay our head here, and so forth, then where would we go to find out about something that's real, something that's true, something that's beneficial? So that's why even at the beginning of the scripture, there's a great salutation to Patanjali, he who solved the diseases of the mind, of the body, and of the spirit. And basically, that's kind of a rendering of that. There's the rasas and the dhatus, the fluid essences and the things in the body that you have to become aware of to heal. But basically, you're going to be healing that by the prana and by the mind and by the intelligence, because all diseases came from those origins. They didn't come just in the body, in nature, but they came before nature, in unmanifested nature and so forth. So you're going back to this origin, utpatti, the origin of all things, in sequences of 5, if you want to put it that way. So that's dull mind, you see. So he says, apply first and second limbs for this problem. You see, yamas and niyamas. Apply the third and fourth limbs for these problems. Asana and pranayama. And for this problem, vikshipta mind, which is back and forth mind, it's basically restless, but sometimes it gets a little centered. You can see how high the standard is for yoga, because if you still have this mind, they don't want you as a student. And I think I can attest to that very well in America at this time, in my experience as a teacher, or better yet, sharing this Dharma, is that I have people who come and, like straw on fire, Vivekananda said, and they burn out and go away after a year, 2 or 5 years. This is eternal life we're talking about. This is the path to enlightenment. You don't go somewhere else. See, you don't go somewhere else for it. You find a teacher, you learn it, you commit to it, you get free, and that's it. And there's no other way to it. In that way, there's just one way to God. Ekam sat vipra vedanti. There may be many pathways, but those pathways are found after you've committed to that one that is true, that is real, that is beneficial. So here you have things like the 5 aids to steadiness. They stops looking so bleak and starts looking more hopeful. See? 5 aids to steadiness, 7 methods of mastery. See, the aids to steadiness would get some enthusiasm behind your practice. Don't be a dull boy. See, all work, no play. Become all work, but do it with enthusiasm. Let play, lila, be something for the future. True play. Then sahasa, courage. That's not just for muskrats. Courage. It's also for spiritual aspirants. Dharya, steadfastness. Adhyatma vidya, seeking wisdom. And mahat seva, service of the great ones. That's what we were just saying. That's Guru Purnima in a nutshell. So you have these 5 stages of steadiness, and then you can get to these 7 methods of mastery that Patanjali, like one of them I said, Jyotishmata, you see, that is an ocean of sorrowless light. You contemplate an ocean of sorrowless light. People have taken to that method. Also, practice of the 4 aids, which I didn't have room to put there, but breath control, contemplation of the alambanas, I just mentioned that, right? Use everything as a station to meditate upon until you master it. Once you master it, you don't fear it or doubt it anymore, and it lets you go. That's basically it. Mastery doesn't mean like, it's my slave and I'm the master, that kind of mastery, but it's that you don't fear it or doubt it anymore. You don't doubt what its nature is, and you don't fear the control it has over you. That's mastery in yoga. It's not like possessing something. You're letting go all the time in yoga. And recalling dreams in deep sleep, because that would be, swapna and sushupti and, jagrat, swapna and sushupti, these 3 states of your consciousness. Now you're looking at them as actually kingdoms of heaven within and so forth, with gods and goddesses and other beings, ancestors included. So this is where they've all gone. They haven't gone to death. Death is just a return to their source, Ram said. When things get destroyed out here, it's just a return to their source. So nothing, they've dropped a shell and their essence has gone back to the source. In the case of objects, they go back to unmanifested prakriti, like a sun. If it blows up in space, it goes back to the thought sun. An insect would go back to prana, see, because it's prana. But you will go back to the Atman. Hopefully, be the hasty retreat for that. Take that as your refuge in this life. You'll go back to the Atman. Otherwise, there's this recycling going on. See, which color garbage bin are you going to be put in? Are you a plastic bottle? Are you some trash somewhere?
No, cheap.
Are you valuable aluminum? See? Can be reshaped into another form. No. And also contemplating Guru and Ishvara, probably one of the greatest forms of mastery, and Patanjali encouraged that. His system wasn't all about that. It was about your own mastery, yoga, and getting into yoga yourself. But Guru and Ishvara then became great aids for you. Methods. And meditating on a spiritual ideal. So that goes across with Vikshipta mind. You apply pratyahara and dharana to that. See? Controlling your mind so that it doesn't obsess with outer or inner objects is pratyahara, and dharana means when that's all, then you can have perfect concentration. And perfect concentration might as well, for us today, be yoga. If we can get that, then it's just a matter of time before meditation will happen. Because in the meantime, most of us are trying to meditate and not being able to. Meditation is that natural. And people can meditate 8 hours for 30-day retreats and not really ever meditate a second. Because they don't know all of the other, they haven't mastered the A and U of Om, or these 24 cosmic principles leading up to meditation. So why are they jump from the lowest step to the highest step? It's not going to work. Not without residuals, he says. They'll be called out of meditation, even if you should reach a high state by these things that are unmastered yet. And it might happen in a different lifetime, to your surprise. So, thorough step-by-step mastery according to the words of the seers and the revealed scriptures. The fourth state of mind is ekagra. Now, we are using this in context of this 26th sloka of the Adhyatma Upanishad, which says, this perception of difference is rooted in the mind. There is none of it in the absence of mind. Therefore, dissolve the mind in the Supreme Self as the eternal subject. So, that's Atman, or Paramatman, and it's one with Brahman. In fact, if we have the time, this next chart will show some of the subtleties of Brahman, which I sent this morning, by the way, as a chart. That's available there if it comes up. Now, ekagra, apply the seventh limb for this, that is, meditation itself, dhyan. So we chanted, was it yesterday morning? Te dhyan yoga nugata paschan devatma shaktim svagunayar nigudam. Practicing the art of meditation, they realized the Divine Mother, the Divine Shakti inside of everything, everyone. So they did it through the path of dhyan yoga. Te dhyan yoga, with the path of dhyan yoga, they realized Devatma Shakti. So it's a beautiful chant there in the Upanishads. So what you would see there was this particular, and some overlapping of these, and also what we studied yesterday. You were here, I showed you the chart on the esoteric 7 gateways to yoga, which is a beautiful teaching, and very important for higher understanding, even beyond understanding. But back here at the level of ekagra, where you were to apply this seventh limb, you see, from the bottom up, pratama, kalpika, you get inner vision. Ratambara, pragya, wisdom, you get. Lovely ritambara, as I like to say. Not just a meter maid, but it's this most ancient word for truth. She'll plug your meter all right. At the highest level. And 3, pragya jyoti, mastery of mind. A very rare thing. And atikranta bhavanina, that is absorption into Brahman. These things are happening at meditation, and the dotted line there is that you're coming in and out of dissolution into a kind of coagulation, thoughts again, and no thoughts. Somebody asked that question last week at retreat. If the mind is reached that highest level, it doesn't think anymore, right? And they said, no, it then can occupy the level of highest thought until it goes into samadhi, and then it'll come back to highest thought. And so it uses this highest thought to write the scriptures, for instance. Sri Ramakrishna had a nice story. He said, man goes into a room, there's a lamp, a table, and a pen. You see, he forges a document, you see, or signs a check, forges a check, and the light's never affected by that heinous act, right? The light just goes on burning steadily, you see. Everything else is the same, but he's just done this act, you see. So, in that way, this mind will come back and take these higher thoughts and write a revealed scripture, you see. But no matter whether he does or not, Brahman's never affected by that. Sri Ramakrishna was saying here, when we read this morning before we were joined by the live stream audience, the story was that when he reaches that highest level of consciousness, the scriptures fall far away, far, far below him, you see. But most people haven't even come up yet to the words of the revealed scriptures. They're still working with the Adharma, or with dualistic scriptures, or fundamentalist scriptures that are giving them a sort of dumbed down version of the truth, mixed with all sorts of things of the world, you see. So there are levels upon levels here, and yoga defines them nicely in terms of these 5 states of mind here, and all of these problems, impediments, and methods and practices and attainments here. And over here you see the different parinamas that happen. That is, parinama means change. So there's a certain change that happens here. Then change starts to get nirod. It means dissolved. See. Then finally, samadhi parinama. You get just a change of samadhi in your head, in your self. And then ekagras. There's just oneness. You see. So different kinds of change are happening to changelessness, aparinama, which is the truth that runs through everything and is not affected like that. Forged check does not affect the light that allows it to be forged in. See? That's the underlying substratum, which is changeless, aparinama. Now, as a borderline between this dotted line, you see, sort of coming in and out, is the 7 levels of attainment. Instead of going through the dissolution of the mind stream as tattvas here, we're going through it in yoga and showing you, because it says here, in both Vedanta and yoga, there is this practice of dissolution of the mind by degrees, by 5s in this case. And you can see quite a lot of 5s here, but so it's borrowed by Patanjali. So first, at the ekagra mind, you just renounce suffering. Even if it happens to you, you renounce it. It's like, there's a suffering in my body. You know, it's sort of like a king living in his beautiful palace with lots of food and everything he needs, and he finds that there's some little problem in his kingdom, you see. It doesn't really hurt him that much. He sends someone out to deal with it, you see. So like that, you know, suffering happens somewhere, like, oh, I've got a problem with my finger, you know, but I'm fine. So suffering becomes so distant from you. Yoga is the destroyer of pain. Who said that? Sri Krishna in the Gita. Let this word yoga mean the destruction of pain and suffering forever. I mean, I had actually argument with one young man once who left the path because he believed suffering was real and he couldn't understand what I was saying. And I told him about Sri Krishna getting beyond the suffering of his cancer, just dwelling with Mother Kali, and he'd only feel that suffering when he came back down to talk to you. You know, they had to man the body. But they're allocating consciousness with the body. The Westerner can't seem to get over that. And these Western philosophers that are around can't get over that too. They're misinterpreting samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi, to be somehow something you can take body and world with you when you go, you see. But that's all in the mind. You have to renounce it completely and then know your consciousness as being singular and non-dual and formless and deathless and timeless and non-physical, no bodies, no worlds. What part of that can't you understand? See? So it's a residual of long time believing, living many lifetimes in the world, thinking it to be real. Your parents thinking it to be real, their parents thinking it, the ancestors coming back because they think it's real. It's a big problem. It's a problem that Buddha threw himself against and finally worked out under the bo tree in meditation. Saw through Mara, which is basically death and suffering. See, what we would call Maya, he was calling Mara, as it will. So anyway, a point there is that one, not only can it be renounced, but it should be renounced because it's not ultimately real. Read Vashishta's Yoga if you want to know how Vashishta counseled the young avatar Sri Ram in getting rid of that idea of people suffering as if it were a real thing. See, it's not eternal. People don't suffer forever. Even people with diseases come out, you see, and have good days. So it can't be real if it doesn't last forever. I remember having a kidney stone once when I was young. Horrible pain for hours, and all of a sudden, great, it's gone. A couple days later, uh-oh. So anything that's not constant can't be real. It has to be constant, and there's only one thing you'll find in all your explorations and all your dissolutions and all your meditations that's real and abiding, and that's you. Your consciousness with a capital C. That's the one thing that stands you in good stead and will be there forever. And never has changed. It was never parinama. It was never based in change. It was based in changelessness, and that's Brahman. So if we can get that into our thick skulls, as my dad used to say, get that into your thick skull. This might have been a kind of an ancient rishi of a kind, and he was like telling me to thin the curtain of nescience, and I just wasn't quite hearing it that way. Once he went in, he had a bald head when he was older, and once he looked in the mirror, shaved off his eyebrows. I think he was a kind of monk, some other lifetime. My mother his wife came home and said, "Oh, Jim, you look like a cadaver." Well, he was only there for another year or two. His second heart attack, he was a cadaver. But the real point here, folks, is that you are never a cadaver. You're cadaverless. You're really the eternal, immortal soul, and you always have been. Well, enough about renouncing suffering. I hope I brought the point home for consideration. Number 2 is eliminating the causes of pain. And you'll find them in almost everything. In fact, even right up to the cosmic mind, there's a kind of a cause for pain. This is why the great free soul approaches Lord Brahma in the scriptures and says, "Oh Lord, your creation is marvelous, so multifaceted. Oh, there's so much to do there. But I'm clean. I want out of the bath." You see, like Vivekananda said, the world is a gymnasium. You flex your muscles and then you leave it. You see, you don't stay breathing the gymnasium atmosphere. You see. It's like hatha yoga studios nowadays. You can actually smell the silence. So you get out of that and you transcend. You go to much higher climes and times, beyond time even. So eliminate the causes of pain. And number 3 is attainment of samadhi. And that's right at the cusp there between Ekagra mind and Niruddha mind. See, Niruddha mind, just apply the samadhi limb. It's dissolved mind already. This is one-pointed. So that's how fine yoga gets. Is that you think you reached one-pointed mind or pure sattva, and you think this is it, And you're living sort of free of pain and suffering, and you know the causes, and you can pretty much step aside asamvedana, they call it in Sanskrit. And but still, there's a completely dissolved state to go to, which is inexplicable, is undescribable. It's unalloyed bliss, and it's also uninterrupted. Ananda is the word in Sanskrit, and there are thousands and thousands of souls whose last name are Ananda. They weren't named that by their parents, by the way. "Oh, I think I'll name you Ananda. Ho-hum. You'll have some ho-hum samadhi later." But no, they had to renounce family and world and attain this name, to rise to this name. Unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss. It's it's there whether or not you're in the body or not at that level. You can even come back into the body and keep that, claim it and keep it. Any time that you'll suffer would be for others. They say the enlightened souls, their default zone is forbearance. See? They'll come down as far as forbearance, but they won't come down any lower than that. And it's for your sake, basically, that they're forbearing. So now these great teachers like Guru Purnima came and teach us, you see, they're doing that not for their own auspice or not for their own good, but for the highest good of others. Then you have 4 there, perfecting of discrimination. As if discrimination will ever stop, because if you have to come back to the world after realization, you'll bring your discrimination with you. Sure, you will. So don't leave home without it. V for visa. No, wait, erase that. V for viveka. Don't leave home without it, because that's what you're going to need. In this world, you're going to need it in spades, even if you're illumined. Utilizing discrimination then, after perfecting it, dissolution of the gunas. Remember I mentioned this morning, you can transcend the gunas at the individual level somewhat in the brain, in the mind, in the world, in nature, and so forth, and in meditation. But basically, this is beyond meditation. You get beyond the whole primal cause for the wheels of creation rolling, which are the gunas. It's how important they are. And speaking about Patanjali borrowing some things from Buddhism, he would borrow teachings of the gunas from Vedanta, which is where it's particular to. You don't find it in any other religion than India, teaching of the three gunas. And it's so helpful at all levels. At the individual level, with your mind, tamas, have sleepiness and rajas, frenetic activity, plus you find out it's really not your fault. That's part of nature of the non-self. It's just what it does. It gets heavy and sleepy, and then it gets restless, and that's how it moves. But when you figure out the art of inaction, you stop moving, at least for a while. That's sattva, see. But how long can you keep sattva before these two little armies of sleepiness and restlessness are marching and chipping away at your little ivory tower there? You see? Can you resist that and stay? Only, Shankara says, if you attain pure sattva. So he gives a fourth, a new guna, as it were, to the whole shooting match. It's like Holy Mother gave the fourth, aid to human life of mastering your mind. You can have a guru and a human birth, a guru, and a desire for liberation, but she's seen people as all three of those fail the goal in one lifetime. Those who had the mastery of their own mind, they attained the goal. So she added a fourth to those traditional three. In the same way, Patanjali is sort of adding to this system this way. It's very good. Then, Shankara adding the fourth guna, pure sattva. Pure sattva, what does it look like? Study of scriptures, serving the great ones, meditation. Because people in sattva usually aren't doing that. They're just enjoying. They're enjoying some contentment, some break from rajas and tamas, right? And so they fall back into the cycle of the gunas. Well, so I'd say that's why the problem sometimes you might find with dwelling in the cosmic mind is that it's very sattvic. Heaven is like that, it's quite sattvic. But you're not perfecting yourself in that. You're not realizing your true nature. There's something that has to do with bodies and forms there. There's some fear of falling to a lower realm and so forth. Little things, you see. But none when you reach that pure sattva state. That's a doorway to get you beyond into higher consciousness. Finally, immersion in awareness. That's one of those unexplainable things. Now there's the secret gateways to yoga, and we already looked at them yesterday, so I'll just mention them. First, you comprehend. First, you have knowledge of creation as vibration. This goes from the top down. Comprehension that all these worlds exist through vibration. The primal vibration is right there. Om, right? So in the beginning was the word. So out of that flows vibration from causal to subtle to gross to grosser to dense. And that applies to both nature and the mind. Gunas again dense would be tamas, less dense would be rajas, and so forth. So this is constantly going forth. Then if you know creation consists of vibration, then next thing you look at is objects, internal movement of particles inside of objects, which quantum physics has looked at now. But Buddha looked at it a couple thousand years earlier with an electron microscope as a third eye, see, and saw beyond matter and beyond ancestors and saw the truth. One thing you should know about me, no matter what they say, I am awakened. So Buddha means the awakened one. Prabuddha Bharata is the name of a magazine, Awakened India. See, we're looking for that to happen, and we're looking for it to happen. The whole world should be like India was, with this one, manned up with this one non-dual truth, and all the methods that are designed to keep you in it, should you venture out, for whatever reason, because you fell or because you wanted to help someone. You should be manned up with those systems that get you home. Coming Home is a book written by, first book ever written by our founder, Lex Hickson, here in SRV. Coming Home. The Experience of Enlightenment in 10 Different Sacred Traditions, I think the subtitle. See? So basically, these are these pathways. And they weren't just of India geographically either. There were paths in Zen, and well, that's Japan, but it's India in its origin. But there were other religions, traditions that evinced that kind of understanding. So, eternal movement of particles, then particles as makeup of objects. Know that they're made of sand, and you'll probably be likely to give them up. Would you like to just carry sandbags forever? That's what carrying thoughts and objects are like. I mean, that was in the Gospel. Tadrupa read it before we even started the class today. Just carrying sandbags. Are you going to be a eukaryote all your life? You carry oats. See? Like the merchant wants you to carry oats to marketplace for him. You're a eukaryote. See? When you realize that objects are made up of particles, then you've understood space, and then you have to understand time now. And you notice that these are also made up of particles. Time is made up of particles called increments, seconds, milliseconds. And when you understand that, then next, you know that moments form the passage of time. See, so people are then falling unto the passage of time because they believe in these increments, and they're using them to dictate their lives. And the path of the sun and the path of the moon, the earth is rotating under those, you see. And so dark side, light side, dark side, light side, everything is like based in time. If it's not 24 hours, it's 24 centuries or 24 yugas, and it's revolving in time. So you realize that if you were to be able to take away increments of time, the thought of it from your mind, that you might live in a timeless state. Or, put it this way, that time is of the mind only. Isn't that what he just said here? That the perception of difference is rooted in the mind. There is none of it in the absence of mind. It's like my teacher's, little joke saying, no mind, no matter. No matter? Oh, never mind. If there's no mind, there's no matter. If there's no matter, then there can't be mind, you see. So either way you cut it, as it were, you're looking beyond the progenitor of name and form, time and space, the mind. You see. And if you remove that mind and dissolve it, which is all what we're talking about in the second half, mainly, then you are master of the mind and you're beyond it. And this system says that beyond the mind, even at its highest level, Mahat is the word, and beyond that is you. You see, your true nature. So Yoga and Vedanta manning you up with this highest non-dual philosophy to solve all problems in relativity and return to your true nature as bliss, you see, immersion and bliss. So next in that comes the apparency of time, space, and causality. As you realize they're apparent. They're not actual. Non-actual. You look for words in English for that. Apparent, non-actual, illusory. But illusory is a little dangerous because some schools have taken that too far. It's called everything an illusion. It kind of flies in the face of everything as Brahman, So somewhere you're going to have to give way to that. And it's why Vivekananda didn't like the definition of illusion, Maya is illusion, when he came. Because there had been a few people, not great teachers like him, on the scene before he arrived in 1893 at the Parliament of Religions, and they were giving wrong or mixed readings of these words. The Theosophists were guilty of that in the early days. And so he came to correct that. And so he would say, no, it's not illusion. it's more like a statement of fact, actually. As long as you're here in the body, it seems real to you. You might as well consider it real so you can deal with it. If you just walked away and said it's unreal, you wouldn't be dealing with it, and it would come back and get you later, you see, because you had a immature presumption that you had put it in its place, you see. Trying to put Maya in its place is it's like trying to stop the wind from blowing, you see. And if you can stop the wind from blowing, it's called an occult power, and you'll cause a sailing ship to fall over out there and kill a bunch of people and get a karma for stopping the wind from blowing. So either way you cut it, it's not a good route to go, a good method to follow. But this realizing that time and space are apparent or non-actual, good words for, or false superimposition, vivarta, adhyasa is another word in Sanskrit, would be a good way of putting Maya in its place until you can get beyond it. And finally is the sixth gate, comprehension of eternity or infinity, which time and space both rail against. Their very appearance are like belying or contradicting eternity or infinity. The finite, like Swami Sheshananda said, right, back here in this chart, But nature is not finite, it's infinite, you see. Your real self is infinite, not finite. Your real self is immortal, not mortal. So he would try and bring that point home. Otherwise, all of this makes it look otherwise. So a journey through the stages of dissolution of mind in the yoga system of Patanjali and its Vedantic dissolution of the mind stream, side by side, to end our class today. And we will meet again next weekend. We took like 8 slokas yesterday, and we took one today, just like I said. But the next 2 slokas are about the bliss of the self, Ananda, the true bliss. So next Saturday we'll take those up with a couple appropriate storyboards or charts that we use to help give us a visual as well as this audio transmission that we're getting together as a Sangha here in Portland, in San Francisco at our SRB chapter there, and also in Hawaii. You're welcome to come to them. Your friends are welcome to come. Here, let's end with a chant. Om Tachnayo, Om Tachnayo Ravrene Mahe, Gatom Yagyaya, Gatom Yena Pataye, Daivi Swastarastu Naha, Swastir Manushebhyaha, Urdvam Jigatu Besajam, Samnavastu Dvipare Samchatushpate, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we make a humble offering of the small self into the great self. May we always revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifices. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace come into the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity then also abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hare